during this time, people came from the oasis of Medina to the north that became the venue of the rest of the story. And the last 10 years of the prophet's life, when things heated up and did suddenly mushroom dramatically. Medina is this city. It's about 300 miles north of Mecca. So it's quite far away. But mobility was fairly easy in the arid Arabia because there weren't a lot of forests or obstructions. And so you have an animal like the camel. I mean, even so, I think it took 2 weeks to traverse that distance. It took up to that length of time. Yeah, that would be about right. And the oasis of Medina was a very different place. First of all, it had an ancient name that was different. It was called Yathrib. That was its original name. And unlike Mecca, which was a very small place with small number of clans and with no agriculture, which had even to import its food, Medina, or Yathrib, consisted of a territory that was about 6 miles square. So that's about 36 square miles of agricultural land, which mostly consisted of date palms, although perhaps wheat may have also been grown. And this, in fact, the Quran has a number of fruits and vegetables in it, so that there's some possibility that, of course, this isn't accurate, but I'm just schematically trying to represent that little area was divided up into maybe a couple of dozen warring clans, each one of which was like an independent state in its own right. And unlike Mecca, there was no government organization over the clans at all. There was no senate, there was no agreement on anything like that. As a result, the clans had been fighting a terrible war that was called Harb Bu'ath, which had lasted for several years and had led to a tremendous loss of life. The clans in general were organized into 2 large groups called the Khazraj and the Aus. These were the names of the 2 dominant clans. There were also some smaller clans, especially some Jewish clans there. The Jewish clans probably weren't people mostly from elsewhere, but were Arabs who had become Judaized. At least their culture was highly Jewish, was highly Arab, as appears from the biography. Anyway, these 2 clans had been at war with each other, and they could be best looked on as tribal alliances. And each clan amongst the clans in the place would trace its genealogy to either Aus or Khazraj. And if it changed sides, it might change its genealogy eventually if the change became permanent. So they were more like 2 tribal alliances, and the war that they went on in an area of about 36 square miles could be described as just as serious as World War II, with just as many independent political participants as World War II, even though it was fought on a stage that was incredibly small and minuscule compared to World War II. Nevertheless, politically, that was how it worked out. So some of these clansmen who had heard from the Jews in the oasis that a prophet was coming, and that is based on the text in Deuteronomy where it says that a prophet like Moses will come, and the Jews would expect the prophet to come then. And that figure, of course, in Judaism has been bandied about, whether it's the same as the Messiah or it's different from the Messiah, whether it's to be identified as the return of Elijah, as in the case in the New Testament, or what. But anyhow, it's there in the book of Deuteronomy. And so these Arab tribesmen, a few of them, mainly from the Khazraj tribe, had come to Mecca during the pilgrimage season and heard Muhammad preaching there. And they were very impressed by that. And they thought, this may be the prophet that the Jews have been speaking about. And they also thought, yes, it's true, idol worship is unprofitable and is not right, and which is something the Jews may have also been saying in Medina. And then they also thought, this prophet might be able to solve our problem, our war. Maybe he could come to us and benefit us. And so they negotiated with him and eventually swore an oath of allegiance. And then the following year, a lot more of them came and swore an oath of allegiance to the prophet. And the prophet began to plan the migration to Medina, or to Yathrib, which took place in the year 622.